Hi everyone, welcome back to Coding with Bharat channel. So let's discuss the fifth round of our series of different kinds of round that I faced during interview. This one is the low level design round. So before moving on, do like the video, do subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and let's get started. So if we talk about low level design round, the main idea that the people are going to check is whether your code is extensible enough, right? For example, if new changes are brought about, then will that code be able to scale well, right? Not scaling in terms of the number of users, but scaling in terms of number of features, right? So here the idea is that you are expected to design proper classes, right? Classes interfaces use composition and inheritance, use particular design patterns and principles, right? So that your code is, again, as I said, extensible and maintainable. So if I take a small example, let's say you are trying to design something like Crickbus. So overall, how would you define it, right? So you'll have probably a class for different players, noting down the player stats, probably a match, probably a tournament, so on and so forth, right? But let's say if someday there comes a new format of cricket. Right now we have three: Test, T20, and ODI. Let's say a new format comes which is just 5 overs. So will your code be able to handle that? Similarly, later, if it comes into the picture that something like IPL has come, which is not like tagged with the country. So earlier, the matches used to be just about India, Australia, and things like that. So something like that comes into the picture, or something state level comes into the picture. Or if let's say I want to even start my Crickbus to look for football matches, is the code extensible enough, or are there too many dependencies so that making that kind of a change will be a huge hassle? That is the main idea for this. Okay, this is a lot of time given as a take home assignment, so take this problem at home and try to do your best coding it out in the most extensible fashion. One more thing with this round, how to go about preparing it. So first thing, very important here, you need to know a object oriented programming language. So probably not something like JavaScript, which is very loosely object oriented, although nowadays with the latest version we have classes there. But Java, C++, Python, or Golang, these are good enough to know the object oriented world. Okay, so once you are familiar with this, you need to also be familiar with more concepts that that language offers. So, for example, in Java, we have interfaces, we have static classes, we have abstract variables, right? Sorry, abstract classes. We have, yeah, other things like that. So, enums, right? So, you need to be familiar with what all other constructs this language offers so that you can use them diligently in your code. Second is you need to be very familiar with the different design principles and patterns that are out there. So, for example, for creating new objects, we have different kinds of factory, abstract factory, builder patterns, right? Similarly, we have other things like adapter patterns or probably chain of responsibility pattern, right? Or a command pattern. So, lot of different patterns which are kind of like standards that you can follow in your code to make the code extensible enough. Okay, so you need to do a thorough study of those patterns. This I would advise for a beginner at least, that one time you should know all these patterns, although with coding a lot of times these patterns are actually adopted by us on our own, right? And we don't need to think explicitly in those terms. Okay, third thing is you need to practice a lot to actually code some mock classes out and see if your code runs well or is extensible enough to whatever new changes you can think about in that kind of application scope. So a lot of practice is needed, and it is a good idea to have a mentor here to assess, right? Sometimes you can even self-assess it via ChatGPT kind of tools. You can just keep on putting the classes and uh, the abstraction that you have thought of to ChatGPT and ask it to suggest something better for it or some design pattern to use here, right? Oftentimes it will give you suggestions. If it starts giving you some nonsense suggestions which you can debunk, then probably you can directly say that okay, the design is good enough. Okay. So yeah, that is about this particular round, which is low level design round. Let's see you guys next one. We have two more rounds to cover, so let's cover those.